The Galactic Council chambers erupted into chaos as the grisly videos of human soldiers brutalizing the Lemnorians played on the central view screens. Alien representatives shouted in horror and revulsion at the uncensored footage of human brutality. Humanity's representative Nathan Evans stared straight ahead stoically as the videos played, unfazed by the carnage. As a grizzled war veteran, he had seen far worse in Earth's bloody past. The insectoid Lemnorian ambassador, Tyro, jabbed a spindly appendage at Nathan accusingly. "Are you savages? How can you justify this barbarism? This unprovoked aggression will mean war and the extermination of your violent species." Tyro clicked furiously. As the videos ended and the enraged aliens turned to Nathan, he slowly walked up to the speaker's podium. The council had summoned him to explain humanity's actions. If he failed to justify their brutality, the fragile peace between humans and aliens would shatter. The survival of the human race hung on his next words. "Galactic Council members," Nathan began, his gravelly voice silencing the uproar. "Billions watched the live stream with bated breath. Before you judge us, you must understand our history. Humanity has endured centuries of war and cruelty. We have been forged in the crucible of 1,000,000 battles. Bloodshed is in our nature." The chamber fell silent as Nathan recounted Earth's history, speaking of genocide, slavery, and unending war. Some aliens wept at the reveals, others gagged. Most stared in stunned silence. None had realized just how ruthlessly violent humans were beneath their civilized facade. "This savagery is what allows our species to survive," Nathan continued bluntly. "We do not have your superior technology or refined culture, but we have grit, brutality, and the willingness to do anything to endure. Those poor Lemnorian soldiers never stood a chance once humanity perceived them as an existential threat. We will always triumph, because we will go to any lengths, commit any atrocity, sacrifice anything to ensure our survival. That is our nature." The council erupted again. Some screamed at Nathan in outrage, while others recoiled in disgust. None seemed to have any idea how to deal with a species as innately ruthless as humans, a species that would never stop fighting no matter what. Whatever judgment they rendered, Nathan knew humanity would keep doing what it took to survive, no matter how bloody or brutal. The aliens would just have to learn to deal with their uncivilized savagery, whether they liked it or not. "You call us savages, but you forced our hand," Nathan growled, his gaze boring into Tyro. "When your soldiers invaded our colony on Arcturus IV, they gunned down defenseless families, innocent children. They bombed our hospitals and schools, razed our farms to ash. Your unprovoked aggression pushed humanity to the brink of annihilation." Nathan's fists clenched as he recounted the Arcturus IV massacre in vivid, gory detail. Council members shuddered at his descriptions of charred bodies and wailing orphans. "We had no choice but to take the fight to the Lemnorian homeworld, to do whatever it took to stop your genocidal campaign against us." Nathan's voice was low and dangerous now. "Our forces were outnumbered 100 to 1, outgunned in every way. What other option did we have but to resort to asymmetric warfare, to exploit your few weaknesses?" Several insectoid ambassadors chittered in outrage as Nathan described human guerrilla tactics. Soldiers in stealth suits infiltrating hatcheries at night, smashing eggs. Snipers targeting Lemnorian queens from afar. IEDs blowing up warrior creches. "Lies, baseless accusations," Tyro sputtered. "You have no proof." "We have all the proof we need," Nathan snarled. He tapped a button and a new video played. A helmet cam recording showed human troops dragging a thrashing Lemnorian commander before a crowd of alien soldiers. The humans forced the commander to his knees and blew his head off in a spray of ichor. As the corpse toppled over, the human soldiers tossed the decapitated skull into the shrieking crowd. "This atrocity broke the back of your 3rd Hive Battalion," Nathan said coldly, as shocked gasps filled the chamber. "They scattered and fled after watching their leader executed. With their morale crushed, they were easy prey." Nathan rounded on him, eyes blazing. "Don't lecture me about war crimes. I've seen the records of what your kind has done. Entire species enslaved, Civilizations crushed under your heel. You have no right to judge us." The chamber exploded with the clamor of a dozen races yelling over each other. Half the council leapt to their feet, pointing and gesticulating wildly. The ruckus was so loud, I could barely make out what any of them were saying. The humans' actions were justified. They fought for their survival. No, they went too far. This was butchery, pure and simple. Savages. They're no better than animals. You would have done the same in their position. I watched the pandemonium unfold, my face an impassive mask. These pompous bureaucrats could debate the morality of our choices all they wanted. They had the luxury of judging from the safety of their council seats. They never had to make the hard calls in the heat of battle. The only opinion that mattered was that of the human race, and we had already rendered our verdict. We did what we had to do. As the arguing reached a fever pitch, I continued my account, raising my voice to be heard over the din. Through sheer grit and tenacity, our soldiers eventually triumphed over the Lemnorians. We reverse-engineered their technology, turning their own weapons against them. I tapped a button, and a new video played on the screens, showing human scientists working feverishly in a lab. Our top minds created a biological agent designed to target Lemnorian physiology. It ravaged their bodies, leaving them too weak to fight. The video changed to show Lemnorian warriors collapsing in the streets, twitching and foaming at the mouth. Gasps of horror rippled through the council. We also unleashed our elite hacker units, I continued. They infiltrated the Lemnorian systems and crippled their infrastructure. Power grids failed, communication networks collapsed, financial systems froze. We sowed chaos and panic among their civilians. More footage played, showing Lemnorian cities plunging into darkness, traffic signals failing, mobs rioting in the streets. Tyro leapt up, his forelimbs shaking with rage. "This is too much. You cannot possibly justify these." "We did what was necessary," I growled. "The fact that we are standing here today is proof of that. The Lemnorian threat has been neutralized. Humanity is safe." I stared out at the council, my eyes hard as flint. "Judge us if you want. Condemn our actions. It changes nothing. We will do whatever it takes to protect our own. Never forget that." As the shouting in the council chamber reached a deafening crescendo, a new voice suddenly cut through the chaos like a plasma torch through steel. The voice belonged to a tall, lanky alien with cerulean skin and gleaming amber eyes. He stood, drawing the attention of every being in the vast auditorium. I sized up this new player warily as he spoke. The Kilikians were one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, with a reputation for cunning diplomacy and ruthless realpolitik. I sensed this Zorn character had his own agenda in speaking up now. "My esteemed colleagues," Zorn continued, his soothing voice a jarring contrast to the pandemonium of moments before. "While the humans' actions may seem shocking, we must remember they are new to the galactic stage. Their behavior, while brutal, is hardly surprising for such a young species." Murmurs rippled through the assembly at his words. Zorn pressed on undeterred. "Many of your own people's histories are marked by conflict and conquest. The Lemnorians themselves have a long record of subjugating other races. Are any of us truly in a position to judge?" Tyro leapt up to object, but Zorn spoke over him calmly. "I propose that rather than condemning the humans, we seek to understand and engage with them, to build bridges rather than walls. I call for a series of diplomatic missions to their homeworld, to foster cooperation between our peoples." The chamber erupted in fresh debate at his proposal. Many seemed resistant to the idea of treating with such a violent race, but a few of the more idealistic delegates voiced cautious support, seeing an opportunity for an alliance. I watched the argument unfold, my mind racing. I didn't trust this Zorn or his honeyed words, but his suggestion had potential. If these advanced alien races sent emissaries to Earth, it could be a chance to acquire their knowledge and technology through cunning or coercion. Humanity would have to tread carefully, but we could spin this to our advantage. We always did in the end. As the shouting match between the alien delegates reached a fever pitch, I decided I had heard enough of their sanctimonious posturing. It was time to put these self-righteous bureaucrats in their place. I slammed my fist on the podium, the resounding bang echoing through the chamber like a gunshot. The clamor died instantly as every eye turned to me. "Enough!" I roared, my voice dripping with contempt. "Humanity has no interest in your paltry olive branches or condescending lectures. We will not be subsumed into your so-called galactic community as just another vassal race to be exploited." I turned to Ambassador Zorn, fixing him with a withering glare. "You Kilikians are no different than the Lemnorians or any other empire that has sought to subjugate those weaker than you. Your honeyed words of diplomacy are just a thin veneer for your true intentions. To manipulate and control us, to bend humanity to your will." Zorn's face remained a mask of calm composure, but I could see a flicker of irritation in his amber eyes. Good. I wanted to get under his skin. The Kilikian opened his mouth to retort, but I steamrolled on, my voice rising to a crescendo. "Humanity will not be cowed or controlled by the likes of you. We will continue to defend ourselves by any means necessary, just as we always have. And we certainly don't need your permission or approval to do so." Angry shouts erupted from the gathered council members, a cacophony of outrage and indignation. Many leapt to their feet, gesticulating wildly, as they hurled accusations of arrogance and recklessness. But I noted with satisfaction that a few of the more militaristic races, the Saurians, the Kzinti, the Vulcarians, remained seated, nodding slightly as if in agreement. They understood the realities of a hostile universe in a way these mewling diplomats never could. "In fact," I continued, a harsh edge to my words, "humanity's reach already extends far beyond the confines of Earth. As we speak, human colonies are being established on resource-rich worlds in distant corners of the galaxy. Our brightest minds are pushing the boundaries of science and technology, crafting tools and weapons that will rival anything your advanced civilizations have to offer." I could see the alarm and unease rippling through the assembled aliens as the import of my words sank in. Humanity's rapid advancements were clearly an unwelcome surprise to many. "So consider this a warning," I growled, my tone low and menacing. "Humanity will not tolerate any threats to our sovereignty or our interests. If you dare to interfere in our affairs, you will face the full might of our ever-growing power. I suggest you think long and hard before crossing us." With that, I stepped back from the podium, folding my arms across my chest as I surveyed the chaos I had unleashed. The council had descended into a maelstrom of shouted threats, panicked whispers, and fevered debate. Let them squabble and scheme. Humanity would forge its own path among the stars, beholden to none, and gods help any foolish enough to stand in our way. Nathan's declaration reverberated through the council chamber like a thunderclap, leaving stunned silence in its wake. For a long moment, no one moved or spoke, as if time itself had frozen. Then the uproar erupted, a dozen alien races leaping to their feet, shouting and gesticulating wildly. "Outrageous," the Lemnorian ambassador screeched, his compound eyes bulging with rage. "The humans must be expelled from this council at once." "Hear, hear," cried the Zorlax, pounding their tentacles on the desks. "They cannot be allowed to spread their savagery unchecked." Other voices rose in assent, demanding humanity's immediate punishment and containment. I watched the pandemonium unfold, my face an impassive mask. Inwardly, I was taut as a coiled spring, ready to react to any sudden moves. Just as the calls for our expulsion reached a fever pitch, a calm, measured voice cut through the din like a laser. "If I may," Ambassador Zorn said, rising gracefully to his feet. The Kilikian's mere presence seemed to command attention, and gradually the clamor died down as all eyes turned to him. Angry mutters rippled through the crowd, but Zorn pressed on undeterred. "I propose a compromise. The Council will recognize humanity's sovereignty and right to self-defense. In exchange, the humans will agree to abide by certain galactic laws and treaties to show they can be responsible members of this community." The chamber erupted in fresh debate, the alien delegates shouting to make themselves heard. Her treaty with the humans absurd, they cannot be trusted. This is appeasement, plain and simple. It will only embolden their aggression. What choice do we have? If we don't find a diplomatic solution, it means certain war. As the argument raged back and forth, I kept my eyes locked on Zorn, watching his every micro-expression. What was his game? The Kilikians never did anything without ulterior motives. Zorn met my gaze, his amber eyes glinting with inscrutable calculations. I could practically see the gears turning behind that cerulean brow, computing every angle and outcome. A chill crept down my spine. The Kilikian was playing 4D chess, and humanity was just one piece on the board. We would have to step carefully to avoid becoming pawns in his schemes. The furious debate stretched on for hours, the council members arguing themselves in circles. I tuned out the bickering, my mind racing through the potential ramifications of Zorn's proposal. On the surface, it seemed like a fair deal. Humanity would maintain its autonomy, while gaining access to advanced alien tech and a voice in galactic affairs. The treaty would buy us precious time to build our strength, advancing in leaps and bounds. But I knew there would be a catch. There always was with these self-serving alien empires. They would try to use the treaty to keep humanity on a leash, dictating the limits of our expansion and controlling our progress. We would need to find ways to subvert their restrictions, to bend the rules in our favor. I was shaken from my musings by a sudden hush falling over the chamber. The council members were returning to their seats, looks of grim resignation on their faces. A tentative agreement had been reached. Humanity would be permitted to keep its independence, but with caveats. We would have to submit to regular inspections to prove we were abiding by galactic weapons treaties. Our colonization efforts would be subject to council oversight to prevent us from encroaching on other species' territories, and we would be granted a seat at the galactic table, but as a probationary member with limited voting rights. I clenched my jaw, swallowing my distaste for these indignities. It was a bitter pill, but one we would have to choke down for now. The important thing was that we had bought ourselves time to infiltrate, to subvert, to build our power in the shadows, until the day humanity was ready to claim its rightful place as masters of the galaxy. I caught Zorn's eye once more as the council moved to adjourn. The Kilikian smiled, sharp and enigmatic, a challenge and a promise. The game was on, and humanity would not rest until we emerged the victors by any means necessary. As the council members finalized the treaty's terms, a tense silence fell over the chamber. The agreement was a bitter pill for humanity to swallow, a list of restrictions and limitations on our expansion, our technological development, our very freedom. I watched the aliens scribbling their signatures on the parchment, a sour taste in my mouth. They thought they had us leashed, that we would heel like good little lapdogs in exchange for a few table scraps of trade and technology. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I rose to my feet abruptly, drawing every eye in the room. Ignoring the murmurs of surprise and disapproval, I strode to the central podium, gripping its edges as I stared out at the assembled council. "Humanity thanks you for the offer of alliance," I began, my tone dripping with barely restrained contempt. "But let me make one thing clear. We will not be bound by any restrictions imposed by this council or anyone else." Shocked gasps and angry mutters rippled through the chamber. I raised my voice to be heard above them, my words ringing out like hammer blows. "We have carved our place in the galaxy through blood and fire, through sacrifice and sheer indomitable will. Every inch of territory we hold, every scrap of technology we possess, was bought and paid for 1,000 times over." I slammed my fist against the podium, the bang echoing like a gunshot. The council members jumped in their seats, staring at me with mixtures of outrage and disbelief. "And now you dare to dictate terms to us? To demand we limit our growth, surrender our sovereignty? For the privilege of joining your little club? I say to hell with that. Humanity bows to no one." "This is outrageous," the Zorlak ambassador sputtered, leaping to his feet. "The humans' defiance cannot be tolerated. They must be made to accept the Council's authority. Agreed, cried the Lemnorian, still seething over his nation's humiliation. The Earthers must be punished for their insolence. I call for a vote to enact immediate sanctions and embargo on their worlds. A chorus of voices rose in assent. The council members worked into a frenzy of righteous fury. I watched the chaos unfold with a grim smile, my point well and truly made. And then Zorn's voice cut through the tumult like a calming hymn. Friends, please, the Kilikian urged, his tone soothing and reasonable. Resorting to threats and punitive measures will only breed more resentment. Escalating tensions now could easily lead to a catastrophic conflict that engulfs the entire galaxy. Zorn turned to face me, his amber eyes glinting with a mix of reproach and respect. Ambassador Evans, while I understand your people's desire for autonomy, surely you see the benefits of cooperation, of finding common ground for the greater good of all. I met his gaze unflinchingly, my own eyes hard as flint. Humanity will cooperate on our terms, not yours. We'll continue to explore, expand, and defend our interests as we see fit. Any challenges to our freedom will be met with unwavering resistance. I could see I'd pushed them to the brink. The council members looked one breath away from calling in their fleets and declaring open season on humanity. Time to make a strategic exit. As the debate raged on, the aliens' voices blurring into an indistinct roar, I calmly gathered my papers and datapads. By the time they noticed my absence, I had already slipped out the chamber doors and was striding toward the spaceport. My ship was fueled and ready for departure, the crew snapping to attention as I strode up the boarding ramp. I couldn't resist a parting glance over my shoulder at the gleaming council tower. I had accomplished what I came to do. Put the galaxy on notice that the human race would never compromise our values or our identity. Let them scheme and bluster. Humanity would continue to forge its own path between the stars. Anyone foolish enough to stand in our way would be made to regret it. As the engines rumbled to life and the ship lifted off, I allowed myself a fierce grin. The galaxy would never be the same after this day. Mankind had just become the most disruptive force in the universe. And this was only the beginning. As I piloted my ship away from the Council's space station, I felt a grim satisfaction at having put the arrogant aliens in their place. Humanity would not be cowed or controlled. We would forge our own path, no matter the opposition. My musings were suddenly interrupted by the blaring of proximity alarms. An enormous warship had just dropped out of hyperspace directly in front of me, bristling with weapon turrets. My blood ran cold as I recognized the distinctive iridescent hull of a Kilikian battlecruiser. A grizzled face appeared on my view screen, its cerulean skin crisscrossed with scars. Hard amber eyes glared at me from beneath heavy brows. Human vessel, this is Commander Tarek of the Kilikian warship Indomitable, the alien growled. You are ordered to stand down and prepare to be boarded. Ambassador Zorn requires your presence back at the Council for further discussions. I barked a harsh laugh. Does he now? Well, I'm afraid the ambassador will be disappointed. I have no intention of being questioned by him or anyone else. I'm going home, and you'd be wise not to try and stop me. Tarek's eyes narrowed. This is your final warning, human. Surrender now or face the consequences. I have authority to use lethal force if you resist. Realization clicked into place like a mag being slammed home. Zorn, that sly bastard. He'd never meant to aid humanity at all. This whole diplomatic farce had been a ploy to lure me in and put Earth's ambassador under his control. No doubt to be used as leverage against my people. White-hot rage surged through my veins. Rage at Zorn's duplicity, at the Council's hypocrisy, at a galaxy that refused to give humanity a fair shake. My jaw clenched as I toggled the ship's weapon systems online. Like hell was I going to be these lying Xenos' puppet. You want me, Tarek? I snarled. Come and take me. So I slammed the accelerator to full burn, hurtling my ship directly toward the Kilikian cruiser. Tarek barely had time to blink in surprise before I opened fire, missiles and laser cannons hammering into his shields. Alarms shrieked as my ship shuddered under the brutal recoil. I gritted my teeth and held course, pouring a continuous stream of ordnance into the warship's hull. Tarek recovered quickly, returning fire with a blistering barrage of plasma bolts. Proximity warnings screamed as the superheated projectiles slashed past, barely missing my hull. I wrenched the ship into a desperate corkscrew, diverting power to rear shields. Tarek matched my maneuver, trying to bracket me with a net of turret fire. I whooped in savage joy and slewed my ship around, riding the momentum to slingshot past Tarek's crippled vessel. His furious bellows echoed over the comm as I punched the hyperdrive and streaked into the starry void. But even as I made my escape, dread coiled in my gut. I had just fired on an officer of the Galactic Council. There would be consequences, dire ones. And when news of this incident reached Earth, I could only imagine the chaos that would ensue. Some would see Tarek's treachery and demand humanity sever all ties with the Council. Hardliners would argue this was all the proof needed that the alien races couldn't be trusted, that it was us or them. Others would be horrified at my reckless actions. They would insist I had shattered any hope of peace, that I had damned us all to the abyss of interstellar war. And the truth? I didn't know anymore. All I knew was that every human would feel betrayed, enraged, lost. They would be looking for someone to blame, for an outlet for their fear and fury, and the Hawks would be all too eager to point them toward alien scapegoats. I had wanted to put Earth on even footing with the other races, to show them our strength and resolve. Instead, I may have just lit the spark that would set the galaxy ablaze. As I hurtled through the shimmering weave of hyperspace, one thought crystallized in my mind with painful clarity. What had I done? The journey back to Earth passed in a blur of brooding silence and second-guessing. By the time I made planetfall, my guts were a writhing tangle of nerves. I knew the firestorm that was coming, the impossible questions I would have to answer. Part of me wanted to just keep flying, to vanish into the void and leave the consequences far behind. But I had never backed down from a fight in my life, and I wasn't about to start now. As I strode down the boarding ramp, I squared my shoulders and raised my chin, ready to face the mob. I was barely out of the hangar before the reporters set upon me, shouting questions and flashing bulbs in my face. "Ambassador, is it true you fired on a council ship? What does this mean for human-alien relations? Are we on the brink of an interstellar war?" I shoved through the press of bodies, my lips compressed to a bloodless line. Let them speculate and spin. I would give my report directly to Earth's leaders, and to the people. They deserved to hear the truth from me. But even as I marched towards the government complex, I could feel the ripples of my actions spreading. The shockwaves rolling through every human heart and mind. Overhead, banners flapped in the wind, their bright colors at odds with the sudden grimness of the day. Phrases jumped out at me as I passed beneath them, phrases that had once filled me with pride, but now felt leaden with dread. Humanity stands strong, Earth against the cosmos, victory through unity. I had thought my defiance would embolden humanity, would force the Council to recognize our resolve. But seeing the fear and confusion on the faces around me, the hushed conversations and furtive looks, a cold realization settled in my marrow. I hadn't emboldened my people. I had divided them. Those who craved peace were now at odds with those hungry for war, those who urged caution against those who demanded action. And as ambassador, I was now a lightning rod for all their fears and frustrations. Some would lionize me as a hero, defending Earth's honor against alien aggression. Others would vilify me as a reckless upstart, putting human lives at risk for my own pride. The truth as ever lay somewhere between, but as I approached the stark lines of the Capitol building, its facade glinting coldly in the sun, one thing was brutally clear. The fuse was lit, and if I didn't find a way to unite my people, to douse the flames before they consumed us all, then the greatest threat to humanity's future might not be the alien races out among the stars. It might be the fractures growing within our own ranks, the cracked spider-webbing through our resolve, And those were the most insidious foes of all, because they came from within. As I made my way back to Earth, my mind raced with the implications of my confrontation with Tarek. I knew I needed allies if I was going to expose Zorn's machinations and unite humanity against the Kilikian threat. I reached out to the few council members who had shown sympathy for Earth during the initial debates. One of them, a clever and cunning diplomat named Lyrax, agreed to a clandestine meeting. We rendezvoused at a seedy spaceport on the fringes of civilized space. Lyrax was a tall, spindly creature with mottled green skin and eyes that glittered with intelligence. As we spoke in hushed tones in a dimly lit booth, he confirmed my worst suspicions about Zorn. "The Kilikian has been manipulating the Council for cycles," Lyrax said, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "He uses his influence to dominate weaker species and expand his empire's reach. Many of us have long suspected his treachery, but we lacked the proof to move against him." I leaned forward intently. "And now, do you have evidence of his crimes?" I nodded grimly. I didn't fully trust Lyrax, but I had no other options. Together we began the painstaking work of gathering evidence of the Kilikian's misdeeds. We pored over secret communications and financial records that showed his talons in a dozen illegal pies: slave trading, arms dealing, assassination. It was during one of these late-night sessions, hunched over a data terminal in Lyrax's quarters, that the assassins struck. A dozen Kilikian commandos in tactical stealth gear came crashing through the doors, plasma rifles blazing. I reacted on pure instinct, diving for cover and drawing my sidearm in one fluid motion. Lyrax wasn't so lucky. A burst of superheated plasma took him high in the chest, sending him crumpling to the floor. I popped up from behind an overturned table and started snapping off shots, dropping 2 of the assassins in sprays of cobalt blood. The rest fanned out, trying to flank me, their movements inhumanly fast and precise. I was outnumbered and outgunned, but I was a human. We're born fighters. I snarled my defiance and charged straight at them, firing from the hip. I felt the searing kiss of plasma bolts sizzling past as I crashed into their ranks, lashing out with fists and feet and gun butt. It was a brutal, desperate melee. I smashed one Kilikian's faceplate with a rifle stock, blew another's head clean off with a point-blank shot. But for everyone I dropped, it seemed like 2 more took their place. I was bleeding from a dozen wounds when I finally put down the last assassin with a throat punch that crushed his windpipe. Panting and drenched in blood, mine and theirs, I staggered to where Lyrax lay crumpled in a growing pool of emerald ichor. To my shock, the wily old alien was still alive, his fading eyes fixed on mine. "You must finish this," Lyrax gasped, his voice a thready rasp. "Don't let Zorn win. Unite your people for the fight to come." And with a final shuddering breath, he was gone. I knelt there amidst the carnage, clutching my fallen ally's body, and I felt something harden inside me, a cold, implacable resolve. Zorn wanted a war, and by every star in the galaxy I would give him one. I returned to Earth with a heart of iron and a ship loaded with enough evidence to hang Zorn 100 times over. As I broadcast the proof of the Kilikian's treachery across every human world and colony, I felt a grim satisfaction at the anger and betrayal that lit up our comms like a solar flare. Humanity had been used and manipulated, but no more. I met with the leaders of Earth's great powers and laid out the situation in brutal terms. The Kilikians had played us all for fools. They sought to conquer and enslave, not cooperate. Ambassador Zorn was the tip of the spear, his smiling diplomacy just a mask for his species' rapacious hunger. Some urged caution, fearful of provoking the Kilikians' wrath. But I had seen their true face. I had watched them butcher a friend and ally in cold blood. There could be no half measures now, no appeasement. Humanity had to strike first, strike hard, and not let up until the Kilikian threat was ground to dust beneath our boots. It would be a war unlike any our species had seen, a conflict that would rage across 100 worlds and 1,000 years. But I knew with a conviction that blazed brighter than the heart of a supernova, that it was a war we would win. For if there was one thing that defined humanity, it was this: when pushed to the brink, when our backs were against the wall and all hope seemed lost, that was when we fought the hardest, when we were at our most indomitable. And now, with the freedom and future of our entire species at stake, with the spectre of alien conquest looming over us, I had no doubt that humanity would band together like never before, would rise up as one and unleash the full might of our tenacity and genius and sheer bloody-minded refusal to submit. So as I stood before the great and powerful of Earth, as I called upon every human man, woman and child to steel themselves for the trials to come, I felt no fear, only a calm, cold sense of purpose. Zorn and his kind had sown the wind. Now they would reap the whirlwind, and the galaxy would tremble before it. I began to mobilize for war with a speed and efficiency that even I found breathtaking. The sheer industrial might of a united Earth turned at last to the task of species survival. It was as awesome and terrifying as the birth cry of a new star. Shipyards and factories roared to life on every continent, churning out warships and weapons and supplies at a rate that beggared belief. The greatest minds of our time, the scientists, the engineers, the strategists, were marshaled and set to work, their genius bent to the sole task of outmatching and overwhelming the Killikian foe. And the people, I had always known that humanity was fierce, was indomitable, but even I was astonished by the sheer savage joy with which they rallied to this fight. Volunteers flooded the recruitment centers, soldiers and spacers and ordinary citizens ready to lay down their lives for the cause. In every city, in every town, on every street, you could feel it. A rising tide of anger and determination, a swelling chorus of defiant rage. The Killikians had dared to threaten our home, our way of life, had thought they could make slaves and cattle of us. Now humanity would show them the true meaning of war. We would hit them with a fury they could never imagine, would scour them from the stars with flame and steel and unrelenting will. This wasn't just a battle for survival, not anymore. It was a crusade, a holy reckoning. And I was the tip of the spear, the living embodiment of mankind's righteous wrath. Where I led, humanity would follow, united and unstoppable. Together, we would teach the galaxy the folly of rousing the sleeping giant of Earth. Zorn had sought to make vassals of us, but he had sown only the seeds of his own destruction. When I closed my eyes, I saw visions of human armies on the march, numbering in the billions, of mighty Earth fleets that blackened the skies of Killikian worlds. The greatest war in history was about to begin, and woe betide any who stood against the onrushing storm of human vengeance, for we would never stop, never falter, never rest. This I swore on the memory of Lyrax and every human the alien schemes had harmed. This I swore as the leader of a race whose time had finally come. Humanity was going to war, and the galaxy would forever remember our wrath. The war had come to Killikia's very doorstep. Humanity's fleets darkened the skies, raining fire and ruin upon the once proud jewel of the Killikian Empire. A seemingly endless tide of human soldiers poured from dropships and transports, charging headlong into the teeth of the enemy defenses. At the tip of the spear was Nathan himself, clad in battered power armor, his face a mask of grim determination. He led his troops through the shattered streets of the capital, blasting apart barricades and enemy strongpoints with merciless efficiency. Killikian warriors swarmed to meet them, their iridescent carapaces glinting in the hellish light of burning buildings. They fought with the desperate ferocity of a species facing extinction, but even their most elite soldiers were no match for the battle-hardened humans. Nathan and his forces smashed through their lines like a hammer through glass, leaving trails of broken Killikian bodies in their wake. Every step was paid for in blood, but the humans pressed on with a relentless, implacable will. Finally they reached the towering obsidian spires of Zorn's palace, the heart of the Killikian war machine. Nathan ordered his troops to secure the perimeter and push on to other objectives. This fight was his, and his alone. He strode into the grand atrium, his boots crunching on shattered marble. There, waiting at the top of a sweeping staircase, was Zorn himself. The Kilician ambassador was clad in ornate battle armor, his amber eyes blazing with hatred. "So the Butcher of Earth comes to my door at last," Zorn sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Have you finally had your fill of slaughter, human?" Zorn laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Oh, I will savor this moment, Nathan Evans. When I present your broken corpse to your people, their spirits will be crushed for generations." With a roar, the Kilician leapt from the stairs, his blade flashing. Nathan met his charge head-on, sparks flying as their weapons clashed. They traded blows in a whirlwind of violence, their armor denting and cracking under the relentless impacts. Despite Zorn's augmented strength and lightning reflexes, Nathan more than held his own. A lifetime of warfare had honed him into the perfect soldier, unyielding, resourceful, lethal. He parried and countered with masterful precision, slowly but surely forcing the Kilician back. In a last desperate gambit, Zorn lunged forward, trying to impale Nathan on his blade. But the human was ready. He sidestepped the thrust and brought his rifle up, smashing it into Zorn's faceplate with a sickening crunch. The Kilician reeled back, ichor gushing from his shattered helm. Nathan pressed his advantage, raining blows upon his staggered foe until Zorn collapsed to his knees, beaten and broken. "It's over, Zorn," Nathan growled, leveling his rifle at the ambassador's head. "Your empire is finished. Surrender, and I'll spare what's left of your people." But Zorn only laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. "You think you've won, human? You think this is the end, fool?" With a final defiant snarl, the Kilician slammed his fist onto a hidden control panel. A klaxon began to blare, and a cold mechanical voice echoed through the palace. "Doomsday Protocol initiated. Planetary self-destruct in T-10 minutes. All personnel evacuate immediately." Nathan's blood ran cold. He hauled Zorn up by the throat, shouting into his face, "What have you done? Deactivate it now!" Nathan dropped Zorn's limp body and sprinted for the control panel, his mind racing. He had to find a way to stop the countdown, to save the millions of innocents on this planet, human and Kilician alike. But as the timer ticked down with merciless precision, the terrible realization dawned on him. There was no way to halt the sequence, no failsafe or override. Zorn's final gambit had worked all too well. Nathan was faced with an impossible choice. He could flee now, save himself and his soldiers, and leave the Kilicians to their fate. The pragmatic choice, the ruthless calculus of war. Or he could stay, and spend his last moments trying desperately to mitigate the damage, to save as many lives as he could, even at the cost of his own, the idealistic choice, the path of a true hero. In that crystallized instant, staring at the readouts of a dying world, Nathan saw with sudden, searing clarity the futility of it all, the endless cycle of war and retribution that had consumed the galaxy for so long. If he left now, humanity would win this battle, but the war would only continue. The Kilicians would become martyrs, their hatred and thirst for vengeance redoubled, and so the bloodshed would go on, a self-perpetuating spiral of violence and misery. No, Nathan realized, it had to end here with him. He had to break the cycle, to make a sacrifice so profound that it would shatter the very foundations of this conflict. Only then could there be any hope for lasting peace. With a heavy heart he made his choice. Fingers flying over the controls, he managed to redirect the bulk of the Doomsday device's destructive power into the planet's uninhabited regions. The cities would be spared the worst of the cataclysm. But he couldn't stop it entirely. The planet shuddered and convulsed as the first shockwaves hit, the palace crumbling around him. Nathan closed his eyes and thought of Earth, of the green hills and blue skies he would never see again. In the aftermath, the stunned survivors picked through the rubble, trying to make sense of what had happened. The Kilician Empire was no more, its cities in ruins, its once mighty fleets reduced to drifting wreckage. The Galactic Council too lay in tatters, its members scattered to the winds. Some wept for the fallen, while others simply struggled to hold their shattered civilizations together. Humanity had won its great victory, but the cost had been incalculable. Entire worlds had been scoured of life, and the casualties numbered in the billions. The grief and trauma would linger for generations. But in truth, no one knew for certain. He had simply vanished, leaving behind a shattered galaxy and a legacy that would endure for ages to come. And so the war ended, not with a triumphant fanfare, but with a whimper of pain and loss. The guns fell silent, and the flames guttered out, leaving only the bitter ashes of ruined lives and broken dreams. In the years that followed, many would question the choices that had led to such a Pyrrhic victory. Some argued that humanity should have sued for peace, or found some way to coexist with the other races. The debates would rage for generations, as the galaxy struggled to rebuild and find a new path forward. But one thing was certain: the name of Nathan Evans would never be forgotten, nor the terrible price he had paid for humanity's survival. The scars of the war would linger long indeed, etched into the very fabric of the cosmos, a testament to the folly and the glory of a species that had clawed its way to the stars and fought to the bitter end to make its place among them. And as the dust settled and the embers cooled, the survivors could only look to the future with weary eyes and wonder what new challenges and triumphs awaited them in the vast, uncharted reaches of space. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.